Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley, and football season is almost here. 2 weeks now till football season. This is episode number 77, and I am so excited, Trace. I cannot wait. 2 weeks from yesterday.
I can tell you're excited.
Will be football season again for the UCF Knights.
Trace Trylko here. Hello, everyone.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
You're very excited.
By the way, Trace
it's good,
here.
because we've not gotten to see much of practice under Scott Frost, so a lot of mystery. A long time since UCF has won a game, and we're ready.
The hype is big, too. The hype is big. There's all kinds of hype going on. Last night, you were at the Fan Fest thing. I did not have an opportunity to go, but you went, and how was that?
I think hype is the right word. There was a larger turnout than has been in many years, and they really laid it out well. And I love that they involved the other programs. So you had volleyball players out there, track and field, soccer, men's soccer. They were doing drills with the kids.
I wonder why that never happened before.
And access to the locker room and a chance to look at the helmets and bounce houses and nitro. And I think, folks, anybody that went had a really good time. And it looked like a lot of people were interested in, in checking things out.
Speaking of, really quick, I want to interrupt you and wish George O'Leary a happy 70th birthday, by the way. There was a very, very nice article in the Sentinel, and it was a great article.
Well, there's not been much from George O'Leary
and he talked
since
to
he stepped
O'Leary
aside.
I tweeted some retweets of pictures of him at the Jaguars practice and stuff, and he looks good and all that, and we wish him the best and happy birthday. Anyway, back to...
Yes, happy birthday to George.
Yeah,
well, and we're going to talk more about FanFest coming up. Our guest in the show is Brandon Helwig. Everyone who follows UCF knows him from UCFsports.com. No one covers UCF as well as Brandon does with UCFsports.com, and for as long as Brandon has been covering
it's always awesome
program.
To have him on. We get a myriad of different things every time we have him. It's awesome. So, there's... The hype is huge. You texted me that picture of the line, and I was like, whew, I'm glad I didn't get to go in a way because, we would have never had any way to get ahead of that line.
But it was well organized, and everyone was real patient in meeting the players. And I'll tell you what a great group of kids. They really are. They're very respectful. They're very pleasant. They go out of their way to meet with fans and talk with fans and take pictures. And you can tell on their faces that they're really enjoying it, which is one of the takeaways. We were at Media Day, and for fans that haven't seen it yet, look us up on YouTube. We did the overtime where you can hear some of the interviews from some of the players. And that was the current.
It's a video where our faces are on there. You get to see players, a little bit of footage from a practice, stuff like that. So
don't you think that was the theme when we were talking to
each
of the players? They talked about how much fun they were having, the atmosphere. They're working, right?
Oh, yeah.
They are working. Yeah. They're busting their tails with the number of reps that they're getting from head coach Scott Frost. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Did he not, during the media day session, allude to that they had a practice or a scrimmage where they ran 119 plays?
He did.
Yeah.
He
Last
did.
year, that's 2 games.
Yeah.
Right? So you can tell they're working hard, and they're excited. And the other thing? 0-12, that's behind them, but they all spoke of it, that it's a reminder to them that they have something to prove to themselves as a team and to the fan base as well. They want to get rid of that as quickly as possible.
Well, I think that's what you want those guys to think about that. You want them to keep it in the back of their minds but not dwell on it.
Yeah.
That's one of those things. I mean, I had bad seasons as a football player as well, and you never forgot them. You didn't just, you didn't do that. You used them when you needed that extra, push at the end of a game, or you needed that extra push to make a play or whatever. You used that. I always held that. Right there. It was right there when I needed to use it.
And they can hold on to that for 2 more weeks, and then they'll have a game to reflect upon, that first game, which, as we've mentioned here the last couple of weeks, we're going to be going live following the home opening game on the Sunday, September 4th, so 2 weeks from as we record now, breaking down the first game.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. It's going to be on Facebook Live, I guess, whatever
That'll be
you
a new
call that.
venture for us, huh?
It will. That'll be the first time we're doing that. So UCF Knightline podcast on Facebook. It's pretty easy to find. I'm not sure if you need to like it or not to do that, but I would appreciate it if you went there and liked that page. We need as many likes on there as possible to get the information out to everyone. And we put a lot of stuff on there. The episodes are on there, and I repost all kinds of stuff on there all week, and so do you. And that's going to be from 7 to 8:30 because we usually do 2 hours on those live shows, and it will be call-in. You can call in on that. We will. I'm not sure if we have guests for that or not. There may be somebody joining us in studio for that one, but we will definitely be taking call-ins, though. But it's 7 to 8:30 because I guess Facebook only allows you to do 90 minutes at a time on the live videos. So,
well, you talked about guests, as you mentioned last week before. We're so happy to have former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel returning for a second season of the Knightline podcast, breaking down the X's and O's. And as we've talked about over and over again, that was so challenging every week when Kyle would dial in and we were setting everything up and we were talking to him before we would hit record, and you're like, oh my goodness, do we have to talk about
it? So we would apologize to him every week for having to do this. We're like, oh man, I'm so sorry.
And back on live for a second, I'm going up for the Michigan game, as I know a lot of our fan base is excited to see UCF at the Big House. You'll be back here in the studios, and you're going to be running
We are going to do our very first post-game live following the Michigan game, and that will be on Rabble.tv. And there's an app on the iTunes store. There's an app in the Android store, or you can go on your computer and listen to that. But it's very readily available. Rabble.tv, not .com, because I always put that in there. But it's just Rabble.tv, www.rabble.tv. Yeah, so I'm going to be live. It's going to be a call-in reaction show right after the game. I said, I think, on the invitation thing that I put out or whatever, that was going to start at either 3:15 or 3:30. I can't remember.
Whenever the game ends?
But it will be starting at the time that I put on Rabble.tv. If you go look at our page on there, it says, but it'll be, just a few minutes or whatever after the game ends. If the game goes long for some reason, I'll hold that and it will start after the game, obviously. I'm not going to start it during the game. But please call in. If you want to write down the number right now to call in for that on the live show that we're doing next, or the live show that we're doing after the South Carolina State game, or that it's 407 205-7427. 407-205-7427. By the way, you can always leave us a voicemail if you want to on there. Or
ask a question.
Or send a text message on that line. That line rings and comes to my phone. So anytime you want to do that, you can do that as well. So
one big thing back on FanFest, I spoke with the guys that were at the booth with the new UCF Sports themed license plate. Remember a couple weeks back we were talking about that? Mm-hmm. I just renewed, and I've got the Pegasus one, and I was wondering if we'd have a choice. The Pegasus one has been retired. The black plate is the plate. Now, mine be good for 10 years, but I could go in there tomorrow and change it. But
I heard that if you go in there, someone else said if you go in there and you want to replace it, they prorate it.
Yeah.
So they'll prorate if you want to change now.
And so I was talking to these guys, and I want to share this with you and the listeners, that every state has a different way of deciding these specialty plates. I have a friend now living in Maryland, University of Florida grad, and he was saying that he saw a Gator license plate for the state of Maryland. So I mentioned it to these guys. They said that it only takes 50 signatures in the state of Maryland to get a specialty plate, where here you need an act of the legislature. You need a lawmaker to put forth the idea of the plate.
Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's a big complicated mess in
Florida.
Florida.
We have like 80 of them or something?
More than any other state, I believe. But in Maryland, they need 50
Can't
signatures.
Be that hard if
we have more than 50 alums
absolutely.
Working in and
the
around
DC area?
DC, Virginia, Maryland. So you
Huge
guys, Alumni
area.
Association chapter up there, take a look at that. Be great to have a UCF plate in the state of Maryland.
It'd be great to have a UCF plate in any state we can get one. That would be that'd be awesome. I mean, this plate's great looking, black with the stacked UCF logo on it. If you haven't seen it, go to the DMV website, I guess, and you'll be able to see that.
Now, when we were on the field shooting the video portions for the YouTube special, the overtime special that we did previewing the season, they were working on the scoreboard, the big scoreboard, and at FanFest, I know, still working on it, of course. I asked a guy, so, how's it coming? He goes, it'll be finished by the 3rd of September. So
awesome.
I don't know how many days in advance, but it's going to be big, and if I'm not mistaken, it's going to be one of the top 25 largest.
I heard 17th largest.
Yeah,
that's what I heard. So that is in the top 25, and that's cool, I guess. I mean, I sit real close to that. It's just to my left. I sit in section 112 or 113. I can't remember one of those. I think it's 113. Anyway, so, it's right there, and I can see that. I know for a fact the student section and everybody else that couldn't see it before is going to be able to see it. That thing is huge. I mean, it's not as huge as the ones obviously up there.
Remember the one in Jacksonville?
In Everbank Field.
Yeah.
But it's, for the size, if you put the size together, with the scale of the Bright House Network Stadium versus the Everbank Field, I mean, it's pretty big. It doesn't go all the way across the end zone like theirs does up there, but it's pretty big. I mean, so that's going to be exciting, and there's going to be a lot of information on that. And I heard that they're putting one on the other end as well. They're putting a 100-and-something foot long ribbon scoreboard there, and that one I've heard they're having some technical difficulty.
They haven't started with anything related to that.
As far as that goes, I don't know if it's the mounting of it or whatever that they're trying to deal with, but that one is coming at some point, supposedly.
So let's dig into the football. Again, there was Media Day midweek, FanFest on the Saturday, 2 weeks now plus of practice with less than 2 weeks to go until South Carolina State comes to Bright House, Saturday, September 3. It was great to be able to talk to several of the players and be a part of the interview session with Scott Frost.
Yeah, and we got to talk to coaches. We got to talk to Coach Beckton.
Yep.
And that will be, I think I'm going to release that whole interview as an extra at some point coming up in the next couple of weeks. Because that's an interview with him, and Trace was asking the questions. It's actually a video interview, so I'll post it as video, and I'll probably put the audio up on SoundCloud as well, and iTunes and all that stuff. But it was a pretty in-depth interview, and I think that can stand alone as an interview with him. So I didn't use any of it on the overtime thing, so I think that we'll put that up as an extra coming up here.
He is such a great guy, long-time UCF Knight, involved with the coaching staff, played at UCF.
And everybody that knows him loves him.
Yeah,
and,
his son went to UCF, and he's done a great deal of work with the UCF Alumni Association over the years. That's how I first got to know him, with the Community Volunteers chapter of the Alumni Association. And he's just excited for football to start as well. And Coach Frost was praising him and Coach Fisher as holdovers from George O'Leary's staff, how integral they have been in that transition. And the players absolutely love playing for him, for Coach Fisher, that, do anything for those guys. And those are the kind of coaches you want to keep with you.
Absolutely. Very, very important. And I've got a clip here that I want to play of Scott Frost during the press conference. This is just some stuff that I chose to put together to, let y'all hear a little bit about what Scott Frost is saying about the team this year and his expectations.
The biggest thing we have to improve on offense is execution, understanding what we're trying to get done and executing. And I think defense is the same way. Those guys have been playing really well, but it needs to be a little more consistent. The reps we're getting out on the practice field are going to help with that. We practice really fast and get a lot of reps, and 2.5 more weeks of that, and I think we'll be ready. Night and day difference in our players right now. Great thing about the group we got is they do exactly what we tell them to. And I appreciate that about them. I appreciate that about the last staff. But these guys were hungry for a different direction and kind of a new culture. I think that's natural anytime you're coming off a tough season. They're really buying into what we're showing them and what we're asking them to do. And the guys are enjoying football. They're embracing our process. They're embracing one another. They're learning how to be good teammates to one another. They're learning how to be leaders. And a lot of the things that we try to teach them to establish our culture are shining through brightly. I intentionally hired everybody on my staff, a bunch of guys that care about players and want to develop relationships with players. There's not a man on my staff that doesn't approach his job that way. I think the players can feel that, the coaches can feel that. Winning football games shouldn't be about coaches versus players. There should not be an antagonistic relationship there. We're all in this together. If something's wrong, it's just as much my fault as the guy that made the mistake. I need to coach better. So I want us all pulling in the same direction. I want us all on the same team, and I think we've done a good job so far of establishing that type of a relationship and culture. We talk very little about last year. We talk about today. Now there's some lessons that they need to learn, and if we have to use a situation from last year to illustrate, we will. But last year's over and tomorrow's not here yet, and all we can really focus on is what we're doing today, rising and conquering today. If we can do that day after day, we'll be in a good place. Well, I'm not going to expect any less because of what happened last year. It's probably unrealistic to think we'll go from last to first, but I know when people watch our team, they're going to see a different product out there. They're going to see a lot of guys passionate about what they're doing, and those things take you a long way. If guys know what they're doing and are loving it and playing their tails off, that's worth a lot. And I feel really good about where we are through the number of practices we've had so far. We still have a long way to go, but I'm starting to see guys figuring it out, making plays, playing fast. If we can get 11 guys out on the field all the time doing that, we'll be in a good spot. We're not going to set our sights on big goals. We're not going to talk about national championships. We're not even going to talk about conference championships. We're not even going to talk about week 2. I think week 1 is vital for this program. It'll be a year and a half when we hit that field since their last win as a program. I want these guys to embrace winning. I want them to think they can win. I want them to expect to win. If we're looking any farther than game 1, we're making a mistake. But to answer your question, we got a lot of experience on this coaching staff, a lot of experience in different situations. I've been involved in 4 national championships. Coach Held, our running back coach, has been a player, a coach on 4 national championship teams. So we have a lot of experience in the coaching staff. Anytime that experience can be used to relate to players, to teach them a lesson, I think that's really valuable.
So what do you think of what you hear from head coach Scott Frost? You were in the media room as well for that interview session.
I love it. I think that he is an honest guy. I think that, he's not setting the bar too high with expectations, and he wants to be a little bit weary of that. I like what he says, though, about, making everybody a part of it, and it's just as much his fault as the player that makes a mistake. We had a guy before that never would say that. Never would say, and we
talked about it a lot, week to week.
And we ask why does he not say this every week? Why does he not say this is a coaching problem? And that is a big difference. We've talked with a lot of players, and they've said that there's definitely a difference here with Scott Frost being at UCF. Actually, I have a quote from Shaquille Griffin here that I want to play that talks just exactly about that.
The change is, I just feel like the atmosphere by itself, everybody is coming together, it's a brotherhood that we're starting to create. And, with Coach Frost being here, he actually bringing back the love for the game. And you can tell people actually want to be here. People actually want to play for him. And, the atmosphere is totally different now. Yeah,
right there, you hear one of the players. He says it all right there. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Don't have to spin that soundbite.
No,
says it all right there.
Yeah. So those guys especially, and I know for a fact, Shaquille and Shaquem's mother and father, and I know that his mom has told me a few times how they would call home and be very upset, after last year's stuff. And she told me it was at the spring game the last time I talked to her in person, but she said that they call now and they're happy and they're re-energized and they actually like the game because they didn't know if they were going to stay or go before at one point with O'Leary. And, I know for a fact because I know them that, this has definitely changed as far as they go.
Yeah, we keep hearing that over and over again from the interviews, and then when we speak with Brandon Helwig, that's a question that we talk to him about, is just the atmosphere that's coming out of camp. The scrimmage was held Saturday. UCF has the Sunday off, and then, believe it or not, school's starting, sessions back, and students begin classes.
We have to remember that, too.
Yeah, that they balance those things out and resume classes or start their classes for the first time as collegians, and that begins this week. One of the things that Scott Frost talked about during the media session was that they'll slowly begin to install the offense and get into game mode, here as the week moves along. And what I thought was interesting from Saturday's scrimmage is that it wasn't on the practice field. They held it inside the stadium. They had them in the locker room. They had them going out the tunnel. Just take away as much of the mystery of that first game, as many of the butterflies as you could for them, and also building that anticipation of what it's going to be like to run out that tunnel for family, for friends, for a big crowd of folks there for the home opener.
It's going to be an emotional thing this year, I think, because it's a new start. It's a complete new start. And they can, like we talked about a little while ago, you still keep that in the back of your mind, but it's a fresh start, and it'll be a totally new thing.
That's
for a
right.
lot of those guys.
One of the top questions that you see on the message boards that people talk to us about, and by the way, I meant to mention that it was great to talk with people who listen to the podcast. I'm not entirely sure why every one of those folks recognized me. Maybe it was because of the YouTube overtime special, but a shout out to Corey, Ron, good talking with you. Bill, always good talking with you. Thank you so much for the support of the program, and others who started talking UCF football and how much they enjoy listening to us every week.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime that you see one of us at one of the games, or I always, before the games, and I'm out there tailgating, and I always, on Twitter especially, at UCF_Knightline, I always say come by and say hi, have a beer or whatever.
And there are people that are big Twitter folks that retweet everything.
Yep.
There's some folks that are more Facebook savvy, and you see that they like it, and they'll comment on the posts on the Facebook page. And and of course the tide has turned on the message board. We get a lot of positive feedback and ideas from folks on the message boards as well.
Some not so much, but there's always a couple.
But back to the scrimmage, the big question is about quarterback. Who's going to be the starting quarterback? I don't understand why there's a great deal of mystery that you'd think that it would be senior Justin Holman, certainly. But from the scrimmage, by the way, Holman had a big touchdown run, 64-yard touchdown run. It was some of the other quarterbacks, however, that got into the passing game a good bit more. Garrett Kruzik. Correct, right? He had a big touchdown pass, and so Pete DeNovo, 38-yard touchdown run. So everybody getting into the mix there. But any reason why you wouldn't expect Justin Holman to be the starting quarterback?
No, not at this point. I think that it makes the most sense because he's the one that has been around here the longest and is a senior and everything else. Give him his last chance, basically. He needs to, if he wants to go and play in the NFL, he needs to make his mark this year and put
in a big way.
In a big way, and put some of the stuff that's happened in the past behind him, and there's no reason why I think that it wouldn't be his team.
It's a short soundbite, but we ask him the question.
I expect Coach Frost to make the right decision, and I respect any decision that he makes.
So there you go. He said
short
it.
And sweet.
Short and sweet, but, a lot of his answers are short and sweet, but that's good. He seems like he's always a positive guy, but he just seems more relaxed now when we talk to him. Because I remember talking to him last year for the overtime thing, and he seemed really tight. And I don't think he was like that this year. He seemed a lot more relaxed. He has very scripted, answers to questions, I think, that he makes for himself. But, I think that, he seems a little bit better. We'll see. I mean, he's not the greatest quarterback in the world. We know that. But I think that he can come out here and do what Frost needs him to do. So.
And speaking of utilizing players in unique ways for this team and this offense, it's going to be the role of the tight end. We're going to see a lot of action with that position, and not just in a blocking role.
Very, very important in this offense. So,
and not just in a blocking role.
No,
they're going to be moving around.
No, they're important in every way in this offense, and we talked to Jordan Franks about that.
It's a big role. We're going to be mismatched for the linebackers and safeties because our tight ends were big, but we also can run. It's a big change from last year where we're basically an extra tackle last year. This year we're spread out on the flex, so we'll come in, running routes still or block the run, so defense don't know what we're doing.
And of course, speed is going to be the name of the game. Everybody's watching for the fast in this offense. And USA Today earlier in the week, 10 players poised to break out in 2016. A mention of UCF's very own sophomore wide receiver Traquan Smith, with the write-up that the 2015 American Rookie of the Year is the Knights' returning leader in catches and yards, a sign of life for a program that was foundering before new coach Scott Frost's arrival. Smith will thrive even more under the guidance of new offensive coordinator, wide receivers coach Troy Walters. So 10 players to watch. A UCF player mentioned
I think there's probably going to be more than that in our world of players to watch, but I think there's going to be some surprises. So I can't wait to see who the running backs are and how they use them and all. That's going to be huge. One of the things that I think somebody asked Scott Frost about it on Media Day, I believe, and I don't have that clip available right now, but somebody asked, is this just a pass-happy, offense? Absolutely not. If you looked at what Oregon did, they were top 10 rushing in college football every year. In fact, leading it a couple of years. So the running backs are going to be absolutely huge. This is a run. It's almost a run more offense than it is a passing offense. So
it's all explosive, and he spoke highly of the offensive line during the media session as well.
And he said that he wanted this offense as much as possible to be 50-50 run-pass. But it's a very run-heavy offense, and I don't think people realize that. So it's not going to be what you saw before, though. It's nothing like Ronnie Weaver up the middle.
Ronnie Weaver! There's a blast from the past.
Well, yeah, I always remember that because in my section, there used to be some people that sat behind us, and they would scream that every time Ronnie Weaver was run up the middle. So it's one of those things that's ingrained in my head about UCF
William,
football.
Stand back for a loss of 2.
Yeah, so you're not going to see that kind of stuff anymore. But anyway, onward.
Hey, what's going on with the Big 12? We've gone 20-some-odd minutes without talking about the Big 12. What's going on with the Big 12?
I don't want to talk about it, actually. And, Scott Frost had this thing that he talked about the Big 12. Somebody asked him what he thought. And this is going to be my motto on this podcast from now on, live shows, everything.
We're just going to play this soundbite.
This is what I think. This is the perfect answer to what do you think about what's going on in the Big 12?
The only time I hear about Big 12 is when I leave the building. Our team hasn't talked about it one time. We're not going to talk about it. We're in a really good football conference right now. I've been hired to get us back to the top of that league, and I think we're moving in the right direction to do that. I don't want our players focus anywhere else than that.
So there it is. After this, we're not going to talk about it.
All right. Can I, though, bring up one thing that was my favorite story of the week?
You can, because this is
the greatest thing ever, really,
to me.
This is
ridiculous.
The Cows' presentation to the Big 12 touted the university being a top research institution, and they misspelled research in their materials.
That's ridiculous.
And there's more.
Yeah.
The Cows left out an S in the word success in the media guide in their section about academic success. West Florida, they don't understand geography. They don't understand spelling.
Yeah.
West Florida.
Somebody had to have gotten fired. I mean, if I was whoever is in charge of that whole thing, I mean, that person would be so far fired. It wasn't even, they wouldn't even know what day it was. I mean, they would completely be like gone.
Couldn't
banish
happen.
them. Security would have escorted them out.
No, well,
that.
I'd like to see him promote those folks within the organization. One more note before Brandon Helwig joins us. Quite a bit of social media talk this week. UCF has a new clear bag policy coming for game days. Be sure and understand that, or you're going to have to walk back to your car in your tailgate area and take all the stuff out. This is not new to football, though. They've been doing this in the NFL for a number of years. Clear bag. My favorite, though, they listed all the types of bags you can't bring in, and one of them is listed as a briefcase. Have you ever seen anybody at the game with a briefcase?
I wouldn't want to see somebody at the game with a briefcase.
This is a little tough, though, for folks that bring kids, because they don't allow the diaper bags either. But
you're going to have to put all that in a clear diaper
clear bag. Get those quart-size Ziploc type
Women
bags.
can carry a small clutch, though. A small purse, because that was one of the things in my household when I brought up the conversation. Oh, hey, guess what? You can't take a bag in anymore. And what? There's women's products that they have to take with them, and that's a big concern. Anyway,
Stay with us. Brandon Helwig is next.
Yeah.
There are so many ways to connect with the UCF Knightline podcast.
Check out our website at ucfnightlinepodcast.com for recruit spotlights, archived episodes, and more.
You can like us on Facebook at Knightline Podcast.
Talk with us on Twitter at UCF_Knightline.
Listen whenever and wherever you are on YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or TuneIn.
Call us with your questions or comments at 407-205-7427.
Go Knights!
Charge on.
We turn now to a friend of the Knightline podcast, UCFsports.com's Brandon Helwig, who's been covering all things UCF sports since 1999. Brandon, glad to have you back on the program.
It's a great day to be here. Thanks for having me.
Everyone wants to know, what are we going to see from the 2016 UCF Knights? But that's quite the point. We haven't seen much of anything yet, and it's all speculation. What's your read of camp so far? At least talk about the emotion and talking to players and the morale and the mood.
It'll be quite interesting. Yesterday was fan day, and that's always kind of the unofficial sign that football season's almost here. We haven't seen much in terms of, what the team's going to look like with, practices being closed and all that. We did get a brief look on Wednesday. We got this, media did anyway, got to see about 15 minutes of the end of practice. Wasn't a whole lot to kind of take in, but kind of got a glimpse at the tempo and kind of how fast they plan to run everything. The vibe, everyone seems excited. Just from when Scott Frost got here in the spring and just his whole attitude and vibe and the style of the offense. And, all you really know is kind of what everyone's kind of telling you, interviews with, players and coaches. It did seem that, the team did have a scrimmage yesterday on Saturday, and you kind of wonder maybe that's a turning point. Just at least based on what Frost has been saying, they started out camp pretty strongly because that was primarily just carryover of stuff that they had practice in spring. And as they kind of piled on, more and more installation and new plays and that kind of things as they got into camp, there was a little bit of a lull. They weren't really the offense maybe wasn't performing to his standards, but then it seems like things started to come together. If you just listen to what people said yesterday on Saturday with the scrimmage, it seems like the scrimmage went really well. From what people said, UCF was breaking out big plays. Now, this was the number one offense against the number two defense, and vice versa, one defense versus two offense. But both sides had a good day. I think the one offense got about 2 quarters of action and apparently scored 40-something points. There were a lot of play, a lot of, big, plays. So, it's really hard to know. I know on the message boards, people are like, let's make predictions, how's the team going to do each game? What's the record going to be? It's so hard. You just kind of want to see it, in person to see, how things are really coming together. It's kind of hard to get past the 0-12, and you're like, well, how bad was that team? Were they really I tend to think they were better than the record, but then again, it was the record. So, how are they going to adjust? You got players that maybe were more recruited for this style, but then you hear really positive things about some of the freshmen. So I'm just anxious to see some football. That's really what I want to see right now.
Yeah, speaking of last night and the Fan Fest thing, what did you think of the amount of people that were there and the way that things were handled and everything like that?
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect. They're kind of the same every year for the most part. You line up, get some autographs. Players are kind of lined up in a parade of tables and whatnot. But I thought it was great. They did some things they'd never done before. They incorporated other sports. They had volleyball, men's soccer. Some other people take part, which is great. To kind of give those sports some notoriety and exposure. They opened up the stadium locker room. Just so people could kind of walk through it. And, I don't know if you guys were or not. It's just a locker room. It wasn't that exciting, but hey, it was still pretty cool to say, hey, this is where the players will get dressed on Saturdays, and this is the tunnel that they go through to go out onto the field. I'd only been in there once when I think I got a tour of the stadium in 2007, right before the first game. But that's the only time I'd ever been in there. So, for most people, it was the first time in there. So that was pretty cool that they opened that up. They showed off the helmets, at least 3 of them. I think they're supposed to have 4. I think there's a black helmet not ready yet. I'm not sure. I mean, there's so many jersey combinations that they could just, they don't even have to use that 4th helmet if they don't want to this year. But they had 3 of the helmets on display in the locker room. You get pictures with them, which was cool. A lot of people enjoyed that. They obviously they had a lot of these kids activities and, different little, there's inflatable things, whatever you could have called them. Had a couple of those going, and then they had Scott Frost was up in the Carl Black Cabana, which was kind of a cool thing because everyone following that project last year, they're building the Cabana. I guess they were calling it the East Side Club for a while before they got naming rights, and they literally just finished that, like a day before the season started. People were already bought their tickets, so they were never able to really have a grand opening, like an open house, where, everybody could kind of, get a tour of it and look around. It wasn't accessible last fan day. So this kind of served as that a little bit. They had Frost up there signing autographs, but, anyone could go up there and check things out and see what it looked like and, all that. So who knows, maybe they'll sell a few more Cabana tickets after people kind of got to see it, for themselves to see what it was like. So it was a great event. I mean, I'm not sure what they, listed in terms of attendance. I mean, it was definitely in the multi-thousands, and it certainly seemed to me like a bigger crowd than I could remember for any other previous fan day.
Question back on football, a lot of speculation about who's going to be the starting quarterback. Would you just not expect that to be Justin Holman? Anything else is going to be a surprise going into week 1, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm fairly calm. I mean, it will be Justin Holman. I think we can pretty much take that to the bank. As far as will he play multiple quarterbacks? How it'll be interesting to see how that kind of transpires. Holman and Nick Patty are what I believe are going to be 1 and 2. Both of them are seniors, so they're not necessarily they're not going to be here next year. They're not going to help. They're not going to help the offense next year. So I just kind of wonder where that kind of thought process fits in if you're Scott Frost. I mean, is there a point in the season where you're like, well, you want to win the games at hand, but you'd love to maybe get experience for the guy that you think might be the starter next year? Whether that's McKenzie Milton, whether a guy like Garrett Kruza could factor in as well. I just kind of wonder if he's going to try to pick his spots to maybe get some experience. And maybe it'll turn out maybe McKenzie Milton, who I don't think has practiced in the last week or so. I think heard he had a hamstring issue or something, nothing major, but I think he's been kind of limited this past week at camp. But whether he gets an opportunity to play. I mean, you always talk about redshirting and whatnot, but, I don't know. That's the thing I'm kind of curious about, to see if there's an opportunity for McKenzie Milton. I've heard a lot of good things, through the grapevine about the camp he was having, and he was really the guy that, Frost wanted all along. He was a player that is from Hawaii and went to the Oregon camps, and Frost was adamant, wanted to offer him a scholarship when he was still the offensive coordinator at Oregon. And he's just, he's short. He's just a little bit short. And, the head coach at Oregon, Mark Helfrich, would not green light an offer. And so in the meantime, he had committed to the University of Hawaii. Obviously, I think they're 20 minutes away from where he lives, in the island, Oahu. And when Frost got, as we later learned during covering recruiting, the first call he made, as far as quarterback recruiting, is he said, hey, you want to join me? I got the job at UCF. You got an offer. Would you like to come to UCF? And at first, he was like, well, no, I've made the decision. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm happy. This is what I'm going to do. But I guess, through the Christmas holidays and everything else, he kind of reconsidered, took a visit to UCF, flipped to UCF, and it's here now. So he's kind of been the guy that, Frost has known this guy longer than any of the other quarterbacks on the roster. So he's kind of being groomed. I mean, they're going to bring in more quarterbacks for next year. Obviously there's going to be more competition as we go into next spring, but you just kind of wonder if there's an opportunity. I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to get him some action.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's something Andrew and I were talking about. We talked with Mackenzie at Media Day this past Wednesday, and, he expressed that he's a little homesick, 5,000 plus miles away from Hawaii, but you've got to appreciate his commitment to Scott Frost and that relationship that they must have, that he'd be willing to travel as far as he is now to be at UCF, and he seems excited about the opportunity. So that's an interesting thing to watch. If Holman wins the starting job and the season's going pretty well, how do you mix another guy or two in there? Or if the season's a struggle, do we see a Mackenzie Milton sooner? But you've got to appreciate a commitment like he's making to UCF.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty big leap, going about as far away. I don't know how much further you could get from Hawaii to come all the way down to UCF, but I think it was really all based on the relationship and that he had with Scott Frost. And, from what I heard, from what I'm hearing from other players, talking about, who's looking good in freshmen, a lot of people are really excited about what he can do. I mean, he's still young, he needs to mature physically and all that, but, like I said, that's just one of the little, things about the season. I'm kind of anxious to see what happens. You got an opening game. You certainly hope if you're UCF that you can kind of get off the stink of last year. For the 0-12 and pretty much put up some big numbers against your opening FCS opponent, South Carolina State. You certainly hope that happens. And week 2 against Michigan. I mean, that's going to be tough. What were they today? I think they were number 7th in the AP, whatever it was this morning when the preseason top 25 came out. That's going to be a tough task. I don't know that that'll be the right kind of game if you want to give Mackenzie Milton some action if he is healthy. But like I said, maybe later on in the season if there's an opportunity to get him in there, I think you kind of weigh that. Is it better off to redshirt him and preserve that year, or would it be better for 2017? If he got a little action this season? I think that's something they'll have to kind of decide as the season goes on.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely see about that. I don't want to be burning red shirts and stuff like that if we don't have to this year. We saw a lot of that last year. So you're out there talking to these guys most days. How do you see that they're different this year, the players, as far as, with Frost being around versus when George O'Leary was there? Number one, you get to talk to a lot more people because pretty much anybody can talk. But do you notice that they're more confident, they're more excited, they're happier?
Yeah, and your point about being able to talk to everyone, that's kind of like the trade-off, I guess you could say, with O'Leary. Well, until last camp, we were able to go to every practice in spring, every preseason practice, media, fans, everyone could watch. The rules were you just couldn't report injuries that you saw and don't go in depth about, practice. Like, don't talk about specific plays or formations, don't talk about, just kind of keep things kind of generic. But, you could always watch to see what was going on. And, obviously things are different with Frost and kind of, it was the same deal, in Oregon. It was like everything's closed, no fans, no media, no one can watch. But the trade-off, I guess, which is a good thing, is that nobody is off limits in terms of media interviews. With O'Leary, it got to a point where we could pretty much usually only talk to juniors and seniors that have played. So it was kind of a smaller list. I mean, maybe it would be like, maybe like 20 guys or, and half of them really weren't guys you want to talk to anyway. So it was kind of, you'd have to kind of go back to the same guys. And so that's good. You can talking to Mackenzie Milton, a true freshman at Media Day. We can talk to him any day we wanted if we wanted, which is great. You wouldn't have had that opportunity with O'Leary. So that's kind of the cool thing, being able to talk to everyone, whenever you wanted to. Talking to Juwan Hamilton is something I did. He's a guy that's having a fantastic camp. Looks like he could be a primary factor at running back. So that's been pretty cool. As far as the vibe and how things are different, it's just kind of it's different styles of leadership. And I know it's kind of been, talked about and debated by fans. O'Leary was old school, hard-nosed, strict, and guys were kind of always on their toes, to make sure that, they weren't going to upset the head coach. No one wants to get yelled at, but that's kind of his style. Frost is, more laid back a little bit. From what I understand, and I was kind of asking some people who have been to practices, how's his demeanor, kind of compared to O'Leary? Because, you could go to a practice, and let's say you put on a blindfold. You don't even need to see O'Leary. You heard him. I mean, you heard him in practice. I mean, there was no mistake. And, you're at a UCF practice, you're hearing barking at, O-line 1 minute, next thing he's over at the linebacker. He just was all over the place. And Frost has a, much different style from what I'm told. He doesn't yell. He's not that kind of coach. Maybe he'll be like, oh, you're lined up the wrong spot or something. He'll kind of get on someone, but he's not that kind of coach that's going to berate someone or yell or kind of, really raise his voice all that much. It's just a different kind of atmosphere, and things are looser. They're playing the music during practice. I know we all talked. It's kind of like, passe now, but we talked about that in spring a lot. This is crazy. What's going on? It's a football practice and they're playing music. So that's still going on. And so everyone seems like a lot more comfortable, a lot more laid back, So yeah, the guys do seem, a little bit looser. It'll be interesting to see if, what's kind of the, you could debate it as much as you want. What's kind of the right style? Is there a medium between the two? But, I think for the most part, guys are really enjoying, being a player under Scott Frost.
I think it'll be interesting to see once UCF does have a bad game, maybe after Michigan, what Scott Frost's demeanor is in his press conference, because we've seen him pretty much say most of the same things over and over again, so I think that's going to be interesting because you never knew if George O'Leary was going to, yell at you or not talk to you at all or whatever, but I'm very interested
The thing about Frost, though, on that end, and you guys were at Media Day, he's trying to temper the expectations a little bit. I think he was kind of asked a question about, maybe goals for that. I forgot what was said. It was maybe in relation to goals and, how good can this team be. And, I know Frost himself doesn't really know. I mean, no one really knows until the season gets here. But he was very quick to kind of point out that, he's saying, like, we're just focused on one game. We just want to get one win. We want to beat, South Carolina State. They're not looking beyond that at all. They're not talking about, as always, O'Leary was like, oh, our goal is to win the conference championship and blah, blah, blah. They're not talking, at least from a team perspective from Frost, they're not talking about big picture goals or anything like that. They're just focused, I guess, for a team that, heck, you've gone, more than a year and a half since you've gotten a win. So, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, the number one thing right now is to get a win, which certainly you hope comes in another 2 weeks against South Carolina State. But he was kind of quick. He kind of picked up on some things here and there. He's kind of maybe done some radio interviews, too, where he's kind of trying to temper the expectations a little bit. Everyone gets excited about, you're bringing in the Oregon offense and how they've been top 10, top 5 in offense all these years in a row. It's like, well, it's not like, UCF won't be able to do that probably right away in year one. It may take a little bit of time getting better personnel in there. So we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about it in a minute. I don't know. I have no idea what to expect from UCF this year. I said it before. If you could get to that 5-win mark, I think that would be a great starting point. And who knows, with the way that the bowl games go now, if you can be a 5-7 team and go to a bowl game, which UCF has an excellent APR, which is kind of those teams get the first dibs if there are any open spots for 5-7 teams. So you could go to a bowl game and only be 5-7. Obviously you'd like to have a better record than that, but I think that would be a great starting point for a first year.
Curious your thoughts on what my biggest takeaway was from Scott Frost's Media Day session was when he was talking a little bit more in depth about the way they've approached training, where they were inside and getting the players reps before they moved outside. What were your thoughts on that part of the discussion during Media Day? Yeah,
it was one of those things where I know fans on the message board are like, well, they're going to put, AC in the indoor facility. What's going on with this? Our guys are going to get soft. And what's the deal? Frost is from Nebraska or Oregon. He doesn't like the heat. He can't take the heat. There's a few people kind of, I don't know if they were joking or kind of like wondering what was going on and say, hey, why are you doing that? But the thing is, and he pretty much explained his reasons. When you run, the tempo of practice is what it is. And they're running one play after another, and you're out there, and it's, the heat index is over 100. The guys are going to be dropping like flies. I mean, guys are going to be sick. You get a heat illness. They're going to be out. There's something they get overcome by heat. They're probably out the next day. There's just a lot of issues that when you want to run offense, and I guess by sake of that, you're going to be running defense as well that quickly, you want to have the most comfortable environment, possible, at least for the like we said, for the beginning of camp, when they're getting going for the first time and, trying to install as much as they can. And, but they've moved away from that. They've been outdoors most of this past week. Their scrimmage yesterday was outdoors. It was very hot. So they're getting back to working outside. But he had a reason. He definitely had. He wasn't just like, it's hot. Let's just go inside. I can't take this. That wasn't it at all. There was a rhyme and a reason for doing that, which I thought was pretty interesting. And I was shocked that they can make that indoor facility as cool as it did. I didn't even think it was, I know it wasn't built, with the intent of being air conditioned, but they did a good job with this temporary setup that they had in. There was one day we did go inside on the very first day, and I was pretty shocked at how cool it was.
Yeah, I remember going in there, during the O'Leary years, and that thing would just be like a furnace in there. I mean, it was hotter in there than it definitely was outside, and they even had the fans going, so that was a little crazy. It's definitely times have changed at UCF for the football team with Danny White and Scott Frost here for sure. Brandon, thank you very, very much for joining us. If there's nothing else you would like to add, I really, really appreciate you coming on. We love it. Where can people read what you put up and talk about UCFsports.com a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it right there. UCFsports.com is the name of the site. I would think most UCF fans at this point have heard of it, at least, through the years. It's been around in some form since 1999, and it's always been the number one gathering place for UCF fans. So, yeah, if they haven't, I certainly employ everybody to check us out on UCFsports.com.
And what about Twitter?
Same thing. UCF Sports is the username. Sometimes, I tweeted out some pictures from FanFest a little while ago, and I hadn't really looked at Twitter much in the last day or two. Sometimes I get like that. Sometimes I'm on Twitter like every day and seeing everything, and then some days I kind of like, there's so much stuff. You can miss a lot of the days. So I haven't been on this weekend, but I did just tweet a few photos. But my username is UCF Sports.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
All right, guys, thanks.
All right, a little bit of news about Knights in the NFL. The Bucks and Jags played Saturday night, showing off some UCF greats. Blake Bortles, 8 of 11 with 2 touchdowns, while Bucks running back Storm Johnson logged 27 yards on 7 carries with a TD run and a fumble.
No shocker there, right?
Yeah,
what's happening this week? Taking a look at your Knights planner. Women's soccer opens the home slate Thursday, August 25th, 7 o'clock. UMass at the UCF Soccer Complex. South Carolina comes to town Sunday, August 28th. First kick at 7. Men's soccer begins its regular season on the road at Grand Canyon on Friday, August 26th. Volleyball gets underway as well. Friday, August 26th, Stony Brook is at the venue on campus. The UCF Invitational begins at noon. Later in the day, the Knights take on Kent State at 7:30. Another doubleheader Saturday, August 27th. Florida State. Seminoles come in at 1 o'clock, and Stetson is at the venue at 7.
And in 2 weeks, we have football. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports.
Let's begin with volleyball. Senior Jayla Hervey and redshirt junior Kia Bright were named to the Americans preseason all-conference squad. The Knights are projected 4th in the preseason poll behind SMU, Temple, and league favorite Cincinnati.
Rowing head coach Becky Kramer named Kathy Less as an assistant coach. Less comes to the Knights after 5 seasons as assistant with Colgate.
Men's soccer, the 3-0 win over Florida Southern Sunday. The Knights had dropped an exhibition against Tampa earlier in the week, 2-1 in that final.
Cross country out with its 2016 schedule. First up, the Knights are headed to Honolulu for a meet in Hawaii on September 3rd.
Hey, you need anybody to cover that? I could head out there for that one. Yeah, women's soccer, they fall to 0-2 on the new season. Not to be embarrassed, though. They played tough road games. They fell 3-1 at number 3 Duke, and that followed a 2-0 shutout loss to number 12th ranked North Carolina on Thursday.
Well, those are ranked teams, and, they're not ranked, so they should have lost those games, technically.
Toughen them up for the American.
Yep. And finally, speaking of the American, it announced its all-academic team. UCF was represented by 196 student-athletes on the all-academic team.
Good for them.
Wow. That's a lot.
And don't forget, check out our special overtime edition of the Knightline podcast, our media day special preview here from head coach Scott Frost, as well as the players, exclusively on YouTube.
All right, this has been episode number 77. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. B-S-E-T-O-R-Y. Tonight our knights will shine.